So, hi, welcome back to FutureFast. And today, once again, we have Paul. And if you are here for the first time, please go back, check out two previous podcasts with him. One, starting with his journey, and two, whole lot of things about why not hydrogen. It's just not that. And uh, and you will know why you are here. And obviously, you're going to enjoy. And I'm looking forward to this conversation as much as you are about what's the prediction Paul's going to make. But I really urge you, I'm sure you will enjoy this, but please go get those two other podcasts and you will really be able to connect where it's coming from. With that, thank you so much for being here and enjoy the ride. Paul, thank you so much once again. So
pleasure to be speaking with you. The future,
welcome.
There's
Future,
this famous,
yes.
quote from the baseball player Yogi Berra, and he said, predicting things is difficult, especially about the future.
Yeah, right. And I don't remember who said this, but this was future is here, but not everywhere. So
Yeah.
I actually
there's
believe
more
it's
than
so
one
true.
future, and the future is not equally distributed. Yeah, that's true. It's
Yes.
like many things.
So what do you think future is going to be?
Well, okay. So the thing that we have to distinguish is the difference between the future the future that should happen and the future that will happen.
Okay.
And so the future that should happen is we should be serious about climate change, and we should put our effort, maximize our effort towards eliminating the burning of fossils as fuels. And that's not just possible, it's practical. We don't have to invent a single new thing to do that. If we chose to do it, we could make it happen. And we wouldn't have to freeze in the dark and starve. There are a lot of people out there who want to make you feel like the choice is either burning fossils or freezing and starving in the dark, and that's not true. Those people are liars, and they're usually fossil fuel funded liars. But the problem is that we have to want to do it, and my concern, and this is a grave concern on my part, is that we really don't necessarily want to do it yet. We might want to do it, but we don't want to do it earnestly enough yet. We're trying to bargain with the problem, and maybe in the old days we were denying it. Oh, the global warming, it's not real, right? The people that say global warming is not real, they're not credible anymore. They're kind of in the lunatic fringe now. They're not being listened to anymore. So even the ones that used to be in that camp that said, oh, global warming's not real, now they're saying, well, global warming's not important. Or they're saying, well, global warming's real and maybe important, but there's no solving it. The solutions are not practical. And really what's going on is there are stages when you have a loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something bad happens to you. You go through stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And denial and bargaining are two of the stages of grief.
Right.
So we're in this situation where we had a wonderful party for 300 years. Now, of course, some people had the party and some people weren't invited. Okay.
Right.
And some people had this party for 300 years where we burned fossils and we made energy from them. And that party lifted billions of people out of poverty and slavery, into a more modern existence. And this was a great time, like a wonderful party. But the party's over. And oh my goodness, the party can't be over. How do we keep the party going? Well, the answer is you can't. The party's over. So you have to sober up dust yourself off and put on the work boots and get working on the transition. The
Right.
trouble is we don't want to. We're still in denial and bargaining with the problem. So my worry is that, someone asked me, what's the likelihood that we'll be deriving less than 5% of our energy in the world from fossils by 2050? And I said, well, we'll be deriving way more than 5% of our energy from fossils in 2050.
Yes. Yes.
Way more. And they were shocked. And I said, look, wake up and smell the cat food, brother. That's the reality that we live in.
Right.
This transition is going to take a long time, and we are going to be stuck with otherwise avoidable climate change. We're going to have to be paying tons of money, whatever it costs, infinite money, whatever it costs, to adapt to that climate change, right? To live with it, because we can't avoid it. We won't avoid it. And on top of it, we'll have the trouble of decarbonizing. All the investment, all the changes, all the adaptation, all on top of one another. If we started 30 years ago when we should have, we would have had a much nicer time of it. But as it stands, unfortunately, I see the future as being one where hundreds of millions of poor people, largely poor people in the world, are going to suffer needlessly because we didn't get our crap together and get on with this transition. And instead, we
So
decided to
you don't think we'll wake up on
I
time?
think some places are trying hard. I think some places are fooling around with starting to try, and some places are in full denial. And what they're doing is they're smoking the hopium pipe, as I was talking before.
Right.
Wishful thinking and green wishing,
Yeah.
leading to greenwashing of some
Right.
technologies that they hope will come to the rescue. And as long as it seems credible or possible that this future technology will come through, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it be nuclear fusion, small modular nuclear reactors, or hydrogen, or what have you. As long as that hope seems credible, then they don't have to decarbonize, right? Or then you get the other wishful thinkers who think we'll just build big vacuum cleaners to suck the CO2 back out of the atmosphere after the fact, which is just, in my view, not just ridiculous, but actually a dangerous fossil fuel need. It delays decarbonization because people think, oh, don't worry, we'll just suck the problem out of the atmosphere later, as if
Right.
things work. So yeah, my prediction of the future is that some places will try earnestly, some places will delay as long as they can, will be forced to decarbonize only at the end of worry about all of their goods and services being border taxed, like the EU is doing, and that's the only thing that will cause them to decarbonize. And some nations will just dig in their heels and say, we're not doing it. Get lost. We didn't get a chance before to make our fossil emissions, and you guys did, so we're going to. And the notion of the transition happening in an organic way, where people just switch to wind and solar because it's cheaper, electric vehicles because they're cheaper, it's happening, but it's happening really slow. Not as fast as it should or it could. Yeah,
Right.
I think it'll happen faster than some people imagine. Some people think it will never happen. And I don't think that that's the case. I think it'll take decades. It'll cost trillions of dollars. It'll require compromises. It'll require political will. It'll require regulatory intervention and tax intervention. But I think it'll happen. It's just going to take a long time.
So
Unnecessary.
who do you think are the biggest influencers in this space
United
globally?
States. The United States. The United States, without question, is the biggest impediment to
Oh,
decarbonization.
impediment, you say? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The United States is
Right.
a giant impediment to decarbonization. And the reason that they're a giant impediment, the trouble is, the United States, I mean, like India, the United States is a big place, right? Yeah, the population's not as big, but it's a big place with a diversity of opinion. And if you look at you look at parts of the United States, they're fully on board with decarbonization and doing their level best to make it happen. Now, some of those efforts are smarter than others and will yield better fruit than others, but some of the United States is definitely on board, and some is still in denial and bargaining full on. I mean, they're building a $1 billion black ammonia plant in Texas City right now. They're not talking about it. They're building it. No carbon capture in sight. $1 billion, you know. So
Oh,
it's just like, people complain about China, and from my opinion, the thing about China that's interesting. There are many things about China that are fascinating, but in this regard, the thing about China that people need to keep, I think, clearly in focus is that China is pursuing renewable energy not because they give any care about decarbonization at all.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, maybe they care a little, but they're not pursuing it for that reason. They're pursuing it because of energy security and energy
Yes, yes, yeah,
sovereignty. Sovereignty, the
yep.
Chinese they understand that they get petroleum and gas from others, and they have their own coal. So coal is last out.
Mm.
Okay. And the reason that they're pursuing electric vehicles and they're pursuing solar and wind is not just to build an industry, that is world dominant and hence be able to extend their
Yeah, no,
manufacturing.
for coal, they've been dependent on Australia, right? For coal.
Yeah, well, they import coal from Australia, but they have their own coal resources too. And so coal is
Mm.
last out relative to petroleum and natural gas. Petroleum and natural gas, they really don't have very much, and
Right,
they need to import
right.
what they get. So they'd like to get rid of that stuff as soon as they can because it makes
Mm,
them
mm,
vulnerable, right?
mm.
So they're pursuing decarbonization agenda, not for decarbonization reasons primarily.
But whatever reasons, as long as it works.
Whatever reason is good enough. But
Yeah,
my problem isn't with China. My problem is with the United States, which is rich and
right.
absolutely could pursue decarbonization in earnest and chooses not to because it's politically difficult. And my
Mm,
problem is
mm.
with South Korea and Japan, who are not pursuing decarbonization but pretending to do so. They have no interest in decarbonization. They're not going to
Interesting.
decarbonize
Mm.
because they know that in a decarbonized future, their industry's toast. Economically, it's in the basket case. Sorry, in the garbage bin. They will be paying 5 to 10 times as much per joule of energy as their economic competitors are, and under those circumstances, they can't have any heavy industry.
Mm, mm.
That's the reality of it. So,
Well, who, anybody, any individual you think is doing some, or a large corporation who's, I mean, obviously one you mentioned a couple of times earlier, Tesla, right?
mhm.
Apart from Tesla, apart from Elon Musk, anybody else you think who's doing
Well,
things which is going to change things?
let's be clear. I think I think Tesla's not Elon Musk, and I think that Tesla is not, they're like any corporation. They have their strengths and their weaknesses, and Musk is at once a strength and a weakness. The thing about Tesla is Tesla's, principal line of business, electric vehicles, is on the right track and doing the right things. And I think honestly, their success is evident and will continue for some time.
Mhm.
But that's not the only thing that Tesla is doing. And some of the other things that Tesla is doing or has done have been failures, and they've just been swept under the table. And a lot of Elon's other ventures, Hyperloop and so on, or,
Right.
the Boring Company, that stuff is just abject failure, and people should realize that. And even SpaceX, and the whole Mars thing is, to my mind, it's fantasy more than economic sense. So you asked me, who do I think out there is doing good things? Well, lots of people and lots of businesses are doing great things. I don't have particular names to give you that I would say are spectacular examples. I would say that the one lucky group to mention is the one that was of former client of mine, a company called Monolith Materials. Monolith
Sorry,
is
come again?
there's a company called Monolith Materials.
Okay.
And what happened with Monolith was that these guys realized that there was a structural price difference between oil and gas in the United States that would persist for an extended period of time. And lots of people had realized this, but they realized it and decided to monetize it in a very clever way. And what they decided to do was to make carbon black, which is the stuff that's used to reinforce tires. It makes tires black. And they were going to do that by taking natural gas and pyrolyzing it, heating it up to high temperature in the absence of oxygen, using a plasma arc from electricity. They use electricity from a nuclear power plant that was built to satisfy demand that never materialized. It was built in advance of demand, and the demand happened elsewhere in the United States. And they decarbonized this. They got rid of the fossil CO2 emissions from making carbon black, which are considerable, and their byproduct is hydrogen, and they're making the hydrogen into ammonia to serve the local market, which within 100 miles of their plant is radius is 40% of the ammonia users in the United States. So those guys have done something really smart, really clever. They can make money with no carbon tax, and yet if the people put carbon taxes in place, they make more money. Okay,
Right.
but they're like a purple squirrel, very hard to find.
Right.
This is a niche, a small business, and when you look at it, people will say, "Oh, great! Well, let's make all our hydrogen that way." Well, if you did that, you'd have giant reverse coal mines burying 90% of the carbon that you produced, and you'd be throwing away half the energy and 3/4 of the mass of the feedstock. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So what Monolith is doing does make sense. And of course, they're selling the hydrogen mythology the same as everybody else because, a fellow needs to eat. And the investors
Right.
want to hear those happy stories. So they lap that stuff up. But that's just one example. There are many others, examples of another one that I think I can mention is a company that's making special anode materials for lithium-ion batteries. Companies called Sila Nanotechnologies, and they're making silicon incorporated graphite anodes for lithium-ion batteries that have the very special properties, give greater capacity without causing faster degradation in battery performance. And what they're doing is very interesting, very high tech, very exciting. There are a great many others. There's a company, unfortunately, I can't mention because they're in stealth at the moment. And most of the time, almost all of the time, my work is done on the basis of, you pay me and I give you advice or I help you. The only time that I will trade services for equity is for personal friends. And this company is the CEO is a personal friend. And other people at the company have become personal friends of mine now too. And I'm doing that. I'm an equity holder in this little startup. And I can't talk more about it aside from to say that they're doing something extremely exciting and fundamental in the world of materials. And if it works out well, it could be a real game changer. So, and it could fail completely. So, but in the
Well,
coming months.
I really wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll huddle up to talk about that. I mean, that would be nice.
Yeah, well, it would be great if and when the things become public, we can talk about it a little bit more, and I can explain why I think that they're making the right bet. But like all bets, it's a bet, and there's all possibility that something will not work out. But I think they have a very good shot, and I think they have an excellent thesis. I think they're making the right decisions for the right reasons. So I think they have a very good shot at it. Yeah, there are lots of people I've come across. People, for instance, that are very smart about how they're pursuing the design of electrolyzers to make hydrogen from electricity, from water using electricity. And some of those people, they have independently come to the same conclusions that I've come to about what it will take to make green hydrogen inexpensive, and where in the world that can happen, and what that means for the electrolyzer technology, what's important to it and what isn't. And in fact, I can say that several companies that are competitors with one another have come to the same conclusions and are pursuing each of those things in their own unique way. And I wish them all very well. We've got to understand, I'm not against hydrogen at all. I think hydrogen is a decarbonization problem we must solve. And my problem with hydrogen is people thinking to waste it as a fuel, right? And none of these guys may, whatever they'll pursue whatever, whoever wants to buy hydrogen that is good, right? They're a customer. But the technology to make hydrogen using electricity is important regardless. It's just a matter of whether it's being deployed for smart uses or dumb ones, right? Uses that help decarbonization or don't. Right. But the solutions that or the issues are the same regardless, and lots of people, smart people, working on that sort of thing. And of course, the battery technology development that's going on in the world is extremely exciting. It's very full of this hopium as well, though. All kinds of people claiming all kinds of things, and then you read articles from in newspaper, online newspapers and science popularism websites and this kind of thing, and the people are always saying, "Oh yeah, they've invented the new thing that's going to revolutionize everything," and then you never hear about it again. It turns out it's just another little bubble from the opium pipe.
Yeah. No, but I'm a little sympathetic to such, because we need those attempts.
Well, what we need is people to solve real problems using real technology, and what we don't need is people putting their faith and their hope in things that have no hope, like hydrogen as a fuel, small modular nuclear reactors. Like, that's, forget about that. Direct air capture is crazy. Nuclear fusion. One of the constants of the universe is how many years into the future fusion will be a practical source of electricity. It's like pi at Planck's constant. Those things are just a waste. Now, with fusion, you can argue, well, it advances physics, and it has byproducts that are beneficial. It's kind of like the space program. People argue, you put giant amounts of money in here and tiny amounts of money will come out the bottom. I would volunteer to do that myself. Give me giant amounts of money and I'll pour tiny amounts of money out the bottom too. I can do it more efficiently. Maybe my tiny amount coming out will be more. But there's a lot of money being wasted on stuff that just has no practical. There's a really excellent article that I read, and I posted a LinkedIn comment about it, which explains that even this recent discovery that was made, where they got more energy out of the fusion blast than the light energy that they put in with the lasers, and it's still a factor of 100 lower than needs to be in order to be self-sustaining. This article looks in detail at fusion and says, yeah, and even once that's conquered, there's all these other problems people just aren't talking about. So don't hold your breath, because you'll pass out long before you see fusion.
Well, but yeah, still a lot of things to be hopeful about, like you mentioned. And
oh yeah, no, I'm biased towards hope, but I reject. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. People confuse hopefulness with optimism.
Wary of hopium.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a difference between being hopeful or having hopeful disposition and preferring hope to despair. And quite another to be, letting your hope run away with you and letting people exploit your hope for their own profit. My sister, once upon a time, gave the advice that Carl Sagan gave, which was, it's good to have an open mind, but don't leave your mind so open that your brain falls out of your head, right? and someone else that I know added and said, well, and it's even worse if you leave your mind so open that someone else can dump all of their garbage in there. So you really want to be guarded when someone's selling you something. you want to understand their motivations, and you also want to understand how they benefit, and whether or not their opinion is being offered from a position of bias or a position of moral hazard, where they benefit from your belief in that thing, whether the thing succeeds or not.
Right.
Right? It's like a stock salesman. He gets a commission when you buy.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the stock goes up or down, he still
Yeah.
gets his
No,
commission. So
but,
of course he always wants you to
Paul,
buy.
nice thing is thank you for doing trying to be a filter for hopium, right?
I'm trying my best. Well, you see, it's because I was an addict myself, right? I believed in hydrogen really firmly when I was a young person, and then I had occasion to spend several years trying to make hydrogen for fuel cells. And this was a project with my former employer, first with Texaco and then later with Chevron. And we were trying to make small reformers to make natural gas into hydrogen that we could use. And first, it was going to be for vehicles, and then they abandoned that and they went into trying to make hydrogen for combined heat and power in homes. And the story I always tell people is that we would be working earnestly, large number of engineers working away at solving the problems of building these reformers.
Well,
And then a bunch of us
didn't tell you earlier that one of the first time I touched something, what I was told is a hydrogen cell, was from a Canadian company. In fact, there was a
Ballard.
entrepreneur delegation had come down to India. And, it was some kind of a CEO conclave where we were called in to meet the entrepreneurs from Canada. And one of the entrepreneurs actually showed me that and was telling me that, this cell, when we are good to go to market, will power energy for 20 years. So I was like,
yeah, well, Ballard and Hydrogenics are two major companies in Canada. And this is actually an object lesson worth looking at. If you go on Google and you Google the stock price of Ballard and of Plug Power versus time from the beginning of time,
right.
What you see is a fascinating graph.
Okay.
It looks like this. It starts out and then it shoots up and then it crashes down and it stays flat for 20 years and then it starts coming up a little bit again. The thing is that for the 20 years in between, it was surviving on largely government money.
Okay.
Getting little bits of money here and there, little pilot projects are being done here and there. They buy some fuel cell to do some testing or some test stands or some other things. And they limped along like that for 20 years. And then the hopium epidemic happens again, and they're right there shoveling the shares and trying to make money from it again. And like I said, in this project, these engineers, we'd all be working together, and then we'd go out for dinner, and we'd have a few drinks, right? And eventually, somebody, usually with a big Texas accent, and I won't try the Texas accent, but he would say, this is stupid, right? Everybody realizes this is nonsense. And everyone would laugh and say, yeah, it's dumb. The thermodynamics makes no sense. It's never going to be worth anything. And yet tomorrow we will work hard at it again because the boss is paying the salary. And this is the reality of the situation. There's an awful lot of people that can't say anything publicly about hydrogen because they know that their bread and butter is coming from there, or at least the boss thinks that the bread and butter is coming from there for a little while. And they stay quiet. And then they send me a private message on LinkedIn and they say, you're 100% right.
Oh, okay.
You didn't hear it from me, but this thing, so many times I heard from people, they say, yeah, this thing, it's not real.
Okay.
It's not real, right? You understand what's wrong with this one. And sometimes I go, yeah, I published about that 3 years ago already. I know that company is making only vapor, they're not producing anything. And sometimes it was an eye opener and I go, really? Ooh. to me, that looked okay. And now I have to go look at it again and see. And yeah, so I get a lot of things in confidence, and I can't share who the people are, but they feel so free. They can say to me, and if you say that I said that, I'll deny it. You know,
No, well, let's not even get into naming them then. But right.
But yeah, no, I get it. Like as an example, people. There are people in the oil and gas industry extremely critical of a Canadian company that is thinking about making hydrogen in a different way, trying to make it in the subsurface, basically by starting a fire inside an oil reservoir and only letting the hydrogen come out.
Wow.
And I had so many people from the oil and gas industry saying, these people are dangerous. Like this idea is dangerous and doesn't make any sense. And I'd say, yeah, I can see that from outer space, the problems with their idea. And oh my goodness, but yet you see some people, they bought into that idea and they think it's going to be a revolution.
Right. So it looks
very,
like
very
there's
frustrating.
a lot of good money coming into some crazy ideas still. I don't think it'll ever end anyway, but
well, we used to joke when at my former employer, which was making pilot plants, right? We made money if they built a pilot plant, whether the thing worked or not, right? And so sometimes people would come in with some crazy idea, and we'd look at it and privately among one another without the customer around. We'd say, "This is kind of crazy, right? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense." And we started calling these biofuel projects, okay? But it's a different kind of biofuel. What they do is they take paper money and they turn it into salaries.
Okay, yeah, that's a good definition for biofuel.
It's the best kind. Oh, anyway, it's very frustrating though when you watch it and you know something needs to be done, and yet people are wasting their time with crazy things, or the feedstock comes in a truck and the product comes out in a little vial.
Right. Well, Paul, I want you to close it with something positive. So give me one good thing.
Yeah. One good thing. The thing that cheers me up whenever I see it is what's happened in the UK.
Okay.
The UK used to make so much of their electricity from coal, and they barely make any from coal anymore. And Ontario, the same thing. We had some of the largest coal-fired power plants in the world here, despite our huge investment in nuclear. We had the Nanticoke power plant, and its emissions were dramatic, and we completely closed it and knocked the smokestacks down. So I'm very encouraged by the demise of coal in certain countries, and I'm another one. This is really, you'll think it's really ridiculous and funny. You know how I knew that solar had turned the tide? It was no longer a future technology promising for decarbonization, but it really had become mainstream. When I heard that the opium poppy farmers in Afghanistan, the illegal farmers growing the opium poppies, were using solar to run their irrigation pumps because diesel was too unreliable. It always came to them contaminated, or the truck driver got shot at, or the price would be 3 times what they're expecting to pay. So when the drug dealers started using solar, I thought, yeah, this is
incidentally, in India, it's part of the government scheme. That government actually gives subsidy to use solar powered,
pumps.
Farming or a water pump and those kind of things. So
yeah, and I use it in my own farm. We don't have any electricity coming to our place because it's too far away from the power poles. And so we don't use enough electricity up there to make it worth bringing in the power. We pay less for our electricity. We have just solar and batteries. And we pay less for our electricity per kilowatt hour than we would pay just to have an agreement an account with the power authority, even if we use 0 kilowatt hours of electricity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Solar is fantastic. It's so cheap, and batteries, my goodness, I bought batteries directly from China. So cheap, so cheap. Before the pandemic, of course.
Right. Wonderful. Paul, thank you so much. This was amazing. I seriously enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our audience and listeners have equally enjoyed it. And all the links are right below the podcast. And like I said earlier at the start of this, those of you who have missed the earlier 2 conversations, I guess I don't even have to tell you. I'm sure after this you will anyway go back and listen to it. But do share this across. And Paul, once again, thank you for being one of the loudest voices on this, where there's a lot of hopium on hydrogen. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I have to speak loudly because I'm being drowned out by tons of people with money saying the other thing for their own financial interest. And I would say thank you for mentioning the links in the description and so on underneath, and people should pursue them, because I've had to say a lot of things. I've had to make a lot of assertions as if they were fact in the interest of time. And you should be very cautious about believing anyone, including me, when they do that. Dig into the references and you'll find out the reasoning and the supporting information that causes me to hold the opinions that I hold. And if things change, my opinions will change, and yours should too, right? We should always value getting the thing right more than being right ourselves.
Well,
and that's the only way we get to
fantastic.
progress.
Actually, I don't know if you've heard of Gita, Bhagavad Gita. That's a holy
the holy scriptures of the Hindu
scriptures for Hindus, and in that it is Bhagavad Gita means it's God's word, right? So it's in the story of Mahabharata, Lord Krishna says that. And at the end of it, he says that don't believe everything I said.
Yep. Well, he's wise.
And
Krishna's wise.
He says that you question it, you realize it for yourself, and believe only if you have realized it. So well said that you actually closed it. Don't believe everything, and including what I said, but this question. So fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I will add only that there are many religions and philosophies in the world, and I prescribe to the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Okay.
Which you should look up if you're interested for a laugh. But anyway, the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster says basically, this god, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, he's not very smart, and he's also drunk most of the time, and that explains a lot about why the world is the way that it is.
Right. Wonderful.
All right. Have a good rest of your day. It's been a pleasure speaking.
Thank you once again, and everybody enjoy the ride till we come back to you with one more special guest such as Paul. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.